Hello everyone, welcome to our channel, Midnight Musings Stories, where silent emotions are revealed and deep love stories are told with all our hearts. Today, we would like to send you an emotional story titled A Night in a Hotel and Things No One Dares to Tell. A love story, psychological, sexy, about two people who have broken up once, who thought they would never love anyone again. But fate quietly led them back to each other. Her name is Emma, 32 years old, a gentle but experienced woman. With skin as white as morning dew, a delicate face, deep brown eyes with a gentle sadness, as if she had loved very deeply, had suffered very deeply. Emma is not the noisy type of woman. She was beautiful in her own way, the kind of beauty that made people stop and stare, unable to describe it in words. And he, Noah, 35 years old, strong, quiet, and mysteriously attractive. An angular face, thoughtful eyes, sturdy shoulders, as if he could protect the world, but was fighting a storm inside himself. They had loved, broken up, lost faith. But then, an unexpected reunion, after many years, made all the emotions that seemed to have been forgotten rush back like an old wind blowing through the heart. Noah didn't think he would see Emma again, especially at that old coffee shop, where they used to sit for hours just to talk about the smallest things in life. She walked in on a drizzly afternoon, wearing an elegant beige trench coat, her curly brown hair slightly wet with rain. She was still beautiful, in a way that time could never erase, and he still sat in the same corner, gently turning the coffee cup, but his heart was more confused than ever. Their eyes met. A heartbeat seemed to miss a beat. Emma hesitated, then approached. Long time no see, her voice was still as warm as ever, but hidden deep inside were layers of emotions that had not yet been named. Noah did not answer immediately. He just smiled lightly, a smile that was half greeting, half heart-wrenching. "Still drinking black coffee with no sugar?" she asked, trying to lighten the atmosphere. "Yeah, still the same. Do you still like lattes with lots of foam?" He answered, his eyes not leaving her for even a second. Both of them laughed lightly. A smile full of memories, but also full of unfinished business. No one mentioned the past, but in their eyes, there were thousands of questions that had never been asked, and thousands of apologies that had never been uttered. Emma looked at his hands, the same hands that had once held her so tightly on cold nights. Noah looked at her lips, the lips that had once whispered sweet words of love in his ear. No words were needed, no explanation was needed. Just a look was enough to make their hearts clench. The cafe was still quiet. The soft rhythm of jazz music echoed in the air. But between the sound of spoons touching cups, amid the lingering aroma of coffee, the hearts of two people who once loved each other passionately were trembling with an unnamed emotion. Emma held a cup of cappuccino, her eyes staring at the slowly melting foam. Noah sat opposite, his eyes never leaving her face, the face that had kept him awake many nights just to remember. She raised her head to look at him. Their eyes met. In that moment, both of them seemed to see themselves from the old days, except that now, there were too many things they hadn't had time to say, and too many memories that had never faded. "I used to think I would never see you again in my life." Noah spoke softly, his voice low and choked with emotion. Emma was silent, only nodding slightly. Then suddenly she reached out and lightly touched his finger on the table. A very light touch, but enough to suddenly awaken the emotions that had been dormant for years. No need for many words. No one needed to ask, "How are you now?" or "Are you okay?" Just a touch of the hand was enough to make their heartbeats skip a beat. Then, they stood up. Emma didn't say, "I have to go home." Noah didn't offer to take me home. Just the two of them walked out of the restaurant together. Very naturally, very instinctively. The sky gradually darkened. The streetlights came on. The wind blew gently, making Emma's hair flutter, revealing her smooth white skin and her soft, slender neck, as if she wanted to whisper something to him. Noah looked at her, a look that could hardly hide his desire, but not rude, not eager, but the restraint of a man who had loved deeply and still loved deeply. The hotel room was not splendid. No flowers, no candles. There was only the warm, gentle yellow light, like the first kiss of the sunset, just falling on the shoulders of the woman standing in front of the mirror. Emma turned around, her thin dress hanging loosely like a silk petal about to fall from a branch in the wind. Her skin, white and smooth, shimmering like a silk sheet of morning dew. Noah swallowed a breath, not because of pure desire, but because the beauty appearing before his eyes was so beautiful that it made men both crave and fear. He stepped closer, not in a hurry, not hasty, but as if he were approaching a sacred memory that needed to be cherished. His hand slowly traced her collarbone, that place, like a fragile boundary between memories and desires. Emma closed her eyes, her lips slightly parted. She said nothing, but her body spoke. The dress fell to the floor, as light as a flower petal touching the ground. And just like that, both of their minds fell into place. No more boundaries, no more right or wrong, only the rapid breathing and the beating heart. Like a drum of a night of finding themselves, Noah leaned down. His lips touched her skin like a late confession. She arched her body slightly, not resisting, not refusing, but accepting as if tonight was the last time they could touch each other with all the things they had never dared to say out loud. His hand slid down her soft, silky back, caressing old memories. Her chest pressed against his, warm, genuine, as an affirmation that what had been broken was still strong enough to burn two hearts lost from each other. They did not make love like two people thirsting for flesh. They merged together like two broken souls, now finding their other half. The collision was instinctive, but gentle to the point of passion. The soft moans were like the sad background music of the love that had never been spoken. Each movement is a memory that comes back to life. Each push and pull is an apology to the past, and each handshake is a promise that if they could do it again, they would not let each other go so easily. That room, although there were no flowers, no candles, was still lit up by the most beautiful light, the light of two hearts that had been hurt, but still loved enough to find each other again. That morning, it didn't start with a gentle kiss, nor a murmur of laughter by the pillow. It started with a silence, cold and piercing to the core. Emma opened her eyes, slowly touching the empty space beside her, where he had been lying just a few hours ago, cold, empty, no warmth left. She sat up, the bedsheets crumpled, the scent of men's cologne still lingering in the air, the familiar scent, once intoxicating, now making her heart clench. She walked barefoot on the cold tile floor towards the balcony door. Noah was standing there, alone, leaning against the railing, his eyes silently gazing into the distance as if searching for something long, lost. No one said anything. There was only the sound of the wind blowing through their hair, gentle, but also piercing, like the unease that gradually crept into Emma's heart. She stood behind him for a long time, her eyes silently looking at that tall figure, once the place she wanted to lean on for the rest of her life. But now, why did it feel so far away? Noah, she whispered. He turned around. His eyes were no longer burning like last night. Only a vague disturbance remained, like the sunset at the end of the day fading in those eyes. "Are you awake?" he asked, his voice low and gentle. But it made her heart ache. She nodded, trying to smile. but that smile was distorted, like a piece of broken mirror, no longer intact. "Last night, did it mean anything to you?" She blurted out, like a child looking for confirmation for the anxiety that was gnawing at her. Noah was silent. He didn't say yes nor no. He just sighed, turned away. At that moment, Emma felt her heart fall into a deep pit. Silence, even more cruel than rejection. She bowed her head, her breath caught in her throat. Was she wrong to let her heart wander back to the place that once made it bleed? Was she naive to believe that love after a breakup could be as whole as before? Noah stepped closer, placing his hand on her shoulder, his eyes slightly sad. "Don't think too much, Emma. We are just living in an old memory." A sentence. Light, but enough to tear her left chest apart. She turned her face away, hiding her eyes that were brimming with tears. She once thought, just last night, they could find each other again. But perhaps. Love doesn't just need bodies to blend together, but also needs hearts brave enough to continue walking together. And this morning, she realized, no matter how hot the nights are, they can't warm a heart that no longer belongs to. The late winter afternoon. The sunset casts pale orange streaks on the hotel's glass windows. A patch of color quietly spreads, like an old memory that has yet to fade away. Noah is still standing there on the 8th floor balcony, amidst the sound of the wind blowing gently through his slightly tangled hair. Below him, the city begins to light up. Each window is lit up like the heartbeat of lonely people. Behind him, the door opens slightly. Emma steps out, no sound, just a familiar scent wafting by, making Noah slowly turn his head. No need to ask anything. No need for an explanation, just that gaze. The gaze whose every line he knows. The gaze that was lost in an old season. Now present before him, intact. She leans lightly against the railing beside him. No need to touch. Just close enough to feel the heat radiating from him, as gentle as an old song that has just been played again. They stood there, silent. No one spoke of last night. No one spoke of the future. There was only the present, so small, so fragile, but enough for both of them to feel alive, to feel the beat in their chests. And then, Emma turned around, slowly walking into the room. Without calling, Noah still followed silently. That room, still just the same soft yellow light as before. But this time, it was no longer a temporary shelter, but like a familiar space where one could remove all defenses, all torment. She sat by the bed, the hem of her dress falling carelessly, revealing her smooth white skin like a thin layer of early season. Noah approached, sat down next to her, not eagerly, not hastily. His hand gently touched her shoulder, as if asking one last time, "Do you really want to?" Emma did not answer, just tilted her head slightly, revealing her slender neck. An unspoken invitation. No whispers, only the sound of hot, mingling breaths. The sound of silk sliding over skin, slow, soft, and haunting. His lips slid along, her collarbone like an artist redrawing an old picture. Every curve, every breath, every vague movement between light and shadow, all were the harmony of two souls once broken, now stitched together by the most primitive collisions. No one said love, but every hug, every squeeze of the hand, every look in that moment was more passionate than any promise of 100 years. Outside, it was dark. The smell of skin, sweat, damp hair mixed with the smell of pillows and blankets, all like a love song that needed no music, no words. After all, they lay next to each other. No more emptiness, only silence. But the silence of a heart that had found its rhythm. Noah turned slightly, looking into Emma's eyes. For the first time, he smiled, without hiding, without hesitation. "Stay." The words were as light as the wind, but enough to make the tears in her eyes quietly rise. Emma did not answer, just raised her hand, touching his lips, a touch just enough to say, "I have been here for a long time." Love is sometimes just a slow look, a timely hug, a breath, in sync. It doesn't need to be great, just close enough to hold each other. After everything is broken, if you are still gentle enough to return, that is the most beautiful miracle.